holding the book. And now I'm holding the book. I'm gonna keep the hands this low because if I bring them any higher, it looks pretty gross. And I don't want to make it that bad for anybody. Also, I think I forgot to put things. Hold on just a little bit longer.
by discovering which one has been responsible for this murder. If she completes this final task, she will be freed from a bondage, a life of bondage and servitude. Torn between the dead emperor's will and the whispers of her own ghost, Sara must choose justice for an empire she hates, or vengeance at the cost of her own freedom. something else, honestly. Okay, I'm gonna make a bowl really quick, and then you guys can choose from that. Also, let me know if it'll be easier for you to understand if I talk like this, or if I talk like this when I'm writing. The ghost. Sounds like the dryer, honestly. Wow, this is really loud. I don't think he's too happy. The closer to talking voice, like this. Okay. Shh. That was loud. Okay. The pull for the books has begun. I'm gonna do that talking voice. I think we can turn the noise suppression up too, which hopefully will be good. And please do let me know if I'm talking too loud. It's hard to do a soft-spoken voice, I feel. I feel like my throat always tends to venture a little bit more towards one or the other. But it's a lot easier than trying to talk like this the entire time, I think. Although someone could do an announcement so that I'm scared to typing because I think my keyboard was really loud. But if someone could do an announcement to vote on the poll. I know not too many people are here right now. It's still kind of early. Plus, our ASMR streams are still very new. It seems like the output isn't actually capturing my voice, which is kind of weird. I'm gonna try something, and you guys tell me if this is too much. Okay. I can't quite hear myself this way, but is this better? Am I louder this way? Or is it about the same? It's a little difficult when I can't hear myself, but since we're just reading today, hopefully I can make do. But it looks like the sound coming out of my microphone seems to be a little bit louder.
jump scare. Oh, I'm so sorry. Sorry. I'll turn on the mic some. Okay. I'm sorry. Okay, we're reading The Bone Orchard. All right. Okay, if I set the microphone down there, is that okay? Am I still at an audible level? No pun intended. I have no way to get this mic too close to my face, so it's a little difficult, but we're making it work. Okay. Okay. Everybody got their blankets? Everyone all cozied up, ready to go? All right. Chapter 1. The night breeze off the sea rifled through the bone orchard, playing softly in the ghastly white fruits, making the solid ones clatter while the long bones chimed and fluted. The trees were as foreign to Beauregard as their owner, Charm. She sat in the solarium with the windows open to the mellow night, going over her books. The soothing rhythm of touch, tally, and check set to the uneven music of her bones. During the long interim between Empresses 4 and 5, the Emperor of Boren had brought Charm to the capital and planted a mine lock to enforce obedience and established her in Orchard House, a triumphant prize, his people believed, from across the sea, taken in the rebellion of Enshil. People of taste and rank forgot such a trifling detail as Enshil's former independence. Charm, a creature of neither taste nor rank, had not forgotten. She wore no colors save black, yet she colored her hair every tasteless shade available. There seemed little reason beyond amusement for the Emperor to put up with his conquest's futile rebellions of color and her turning Orchard House into a gentleman's club. There seemed even less reason for his continued interest in private Tuesdays at Orchard House, since Mistress Charm was fully a foot too short and her carves far too pronounced for Beauregard's ideal of beauty. What talents might have sustained the Emperor's notoriously fickle fascination was cause for speculation over card tables and cigars in Beauregard, not accepting those at Orchard House itself, as long as its proprietress was not in the room. In a city of gray and damp, Charm was a scintillating, illicit legend. Now, she toyed with a spiral of today's brilliant pink hair and rubbed her fingers over the crystal casing of the mine lock in her right temple. A bone ghost, with skin like milk glass and eyes the color of blood, slipped into the solarium. Assembled from the bones in the orchard, their soft parts grown in a vat, bone ghosts did not age. This one had looked 18 since she'd risen from the growth plot in the greenhouse. If not for her coloring, she would have been the perfect image of Charm herself. Because the bone skull had skulls identical to Charm's, they all more or less shared her face. Yes, Pete? The bone ghost laid her colorless cheek down on the gathered black satin of Charm's skirt. Prince Phelan is here, mistress. Charm's pen stopped, hovered in the air above the next column. Too soon. Justice wasn't out of the growth plot yet. He was here too soon, but a son of the Emperor couldn't be refused. It wasn't anything in her mind lock that insisted. This was simply reality. One did not say no to princes if one could possibly help it. One particularly did not say no to Prince Phelan. Charm laid her pen in the carved rest at the top of her writing stand, smoothing her hands down the flawless fit of her black, burlesquely ornate evening gown. Charm tried to cling to the positive. As long as Phelan remained obsessed with justice, he wasn't seeing some other child. Justice wasn't awake tonight, but he didn't know that yet. Charm knew, and the others must have suspected, that a puckered scar on Phelan's temple marked the Emperor's first attempt at mind lock surgery. Oh dear. One moment. Gotta keep my throat hydrated for this one. So many words. Surgery had been a resounding failure. All that remained of Phelan's psychic abilities were fits of uncontrolled rage as famous as his other proclivities. That he had lived had been a tragedy second only to the ongoing survival of his eldest brother, Prince Arleus. The lock on his usual room? It was the only room inside the second floor that could not be locked from the inside. It works, mistress. Then we'll hope we have no need to depend on it. Send him to the second floor. Send him shame and complimentary supper as my gift to him for his inconvenience. He'll want justice, Payne said softly. And he shouldn't have scolded her last time. According to the lady's schedule, she needs another week in the growth plot. Hi, Apple. Welcome in. Yes, mistress. Payne rose and vanished back toward the public front of the house. Charm picked up her pen, breathed, and went back to her ledger. Touch, tally, check. From uptown, the cathedral bells struck twice and went silent. Orchard House closed its doors to incoming customers at 2. In the solarium, Charm breathed in the serenity of the bells and the bones. The night was nearly done. The only traffic in the last entry now would be customers going home. She sealed her last note, gathered her correspondence, and stopped in sheer surprise. A woman stood just outside the gates, examining Orchard House. The low-towners who worked at Orchard House or came to ask about work came, naturally, to the back door. This was no low-town woman. A deep traveling hat buried her face in blackness, as absolute as a grave. The satin of her overskirt gleamed palely. She wore a fur stolen muff against the evening's chill. This was a lady of quality. It was impossible that such a lady would be seen below the uptown mall, much less at the gates of the Orchard House, and yet she stood just looking. There was something about the stillness of the woman that raised the hair on the back of Charm's neck. Even as she rose to go investigate, the noble woman turned away and foggy darks followed her. A chill traced Charm's arms. She rubbed them briefly. One of her customers would have a bad night when he got home, probably, and that was neither her problem nor her business. She took her letters to the front hall. Pride, enthroned at the reception desk, stabilized the house. Charm wasn't sure when she'd become aware of pride, but she was reasonably sure that pain, justice, desire, pride, and lastly shame had been the chronological order of the ghosts. Even now that all of them had bodies separate from hers, she found pride's serene blindness a comfort. Upright, lovely, with ashen hair and blue eyes that saw nothing, pride's sightless, judging stare reminded each gentleman of how they were to behave when they went upstairs. To break with gentlemanly behavior, even with the outward trappings of rank discarded, was to be barred from the second floor, and to risk being unwelcome altogether. To be unwelcome at Orchard House was to lose the political talk of the card room, the impeccable dining, and the prestige of being here in the evenings. The only men immune to those rules were the sons of the Emperor. Prince Phelan was still upstairs. Perhaps they would escape his visitation unscathed. "Tired yet, Pride?" asked Charm, with a smile that Pride could never see. "Not particularly." Pain ran down the stairs. Charm's heart ached in that moment of silence. "Shame is hurt," Pain said softly. Charm's breath punched out of her. She snatched up her skirts and bolted up the stairs to the second floor as the door along the hallway slammed. Prince Phelan's cursing and the sound of shattering glass met her halfway up. Even Orchard's house's thick walls and doors couldn't muffle the sound of his bellows from the close range. Shame slid down the outside of Prince Phelan's door, weeping, with the safety key in her hand. Her mousy hair had tumbled out of its pins, and one hand held her bleeding face. Her cream-colored dress was stained down the front with cocoa, and the left side with blood. Something smashed into the closed door and made it shudder, but the stone oak held. "Oh, Shame. Shh, it's going to be all right. I'm here. I've got you." Charm tried comforting for Shame, even as she seethed inside. "Hush now, we'll fix it. Let's get you out to the laboratory and see how bad it is." Charm slipped an arm around the bum ghost's waist, helping her to her feet and down the back stair. 4 fire drinkers, boring guards, elite psychic instability, came in the kitchen door as Charm and Shame reached the safety of the bottom landing. Of course, Pain had been in a second-floor room with a fire drinker. Their comrade heard Prince Phelan spit, so all of them knew. Warren's guard's theory was that the fire drinkers had enough telepaths in their ranks that they were linked all the time, but the only person likely to truly know was Pain, and Pain could not be forced to speak. Body armor under their scarlet coats and helmets with mirrored visors concealed their identities. Only one wore any distinguishing insignia. Charm was grateful to see Captain Orum's white sash and hoped it was truly the captain. Captain Orum's gift was a rare and exalted one. He was a telepath of immense power. He could suppress Prince Phelan's rage and take his highness to Fortress Isle until the princely fit passed. "Mistress," Captain Orum said, his voice thorough. His helmet visor was identical to every other fire drinker's, but given his name and height, he certainly seemed male. He inclined his head politely. "We'll bring Prince Phelan out this way and through the back gate. It will be quieter." The words were like stabs. "Of course, Captain. You wouldn't want to fuss." Charm all but snarled it, but they were as helpless in this as Charm. Pain, the only one outside of their barracks allowed to see them without their uniforms, had confirmed that every concealing fire drinker helmet hid a mind lock similar to Charm's own, and that they had standing orders far more stringent than charms. One of the newer kitchen girls, possibly her name was Sally, darted forward with a towel from the stack of clean ones by the sink. The other two just huddled and watched with wide eyes. Charm nodded thanks to Sally and helped Shame press it against her slashed face. She kept her arm around Shame across the little kitchen garden and through the orchard. The bones showed stark white where the moonlight touched them, flatted and clicked to themselves. The long brick building past the uneven trees had been a hothouse once. It didn't grow orchids anymore. Now it sheltered far more tender specimens. Charm unlocked the lady's laboratory, stepped inside, and closed the door. She let herself fall back against her own mind, so that the other woman at her head could wake up into the body they shared. The lady blinked and leaned on Shame for a moment. The familiar sight of her laboratory steadied her. Carefully tended cool stoves kept the building a constant temperature and provided a dim glow, just enough to guide them down the half flight of stairs. Growth tanks of glass and steel were ranged neatly along the black wall. The largest tank held a horse skeleton in the middle stages of growing muscles and organs. A creature so large took a long time to grow. The smallest tanks were hardly larger than skeleton. Oh my gosh. The smallest tanks were hardly larger than gallon jars. Lifeless songbirds floated in two of them. They were further along than the horse, feathers just beginning to come through new skin. The casket-shaped growth tank for her human bone ghost was a little separate from the others, covered with a thick black canvas with chains and pulleys hanging over it. Shelves took up part of the other wall, neatly labeled baskets of bones, trays of surgical equipment. A large table near the shelves was ranged with beakers, tubes, vials, and catch basins. Storage crocks stood beneath in an orderly row. In the center of the room was a long, marble coriander slab. It was dark outside, the lady noted. She wondered briefly what time it was, but she knew better than to question her current surroundings too closely. It would only make her black out again. One glance at Shane told her why she was awake. It had taken her years to learn to make them, the vessels for the other people in her mind. Don't worry, sweetheart. I'll fix you. The lady helped her injured ghost to a stool. She tied on a full-sleeved rubberized apron, flicked clean clothes, and a bowl of antiseptic, then peeled the gory towel away from the bone ghost's face. Shame grabbed the edge of the table as Lady wiped away the blood. The slash ran from just ahead of Shame's ear to her nose, laying open the length of her cheekbone. Her cheek drooped, showing the white flesh of bone and the upper edges of her teeth. My fourth, Shame's third. Oh my goodness. Hello, loves. Goodness gracious. Welcome in. My name is Puddles. I am a cat pet illustrator and ASM artist. And today we are reading The Bone Orchard by Sara Mueller. It is a fantasy novel. We're about 8 pages in, so you don't miss too much. Thank you so much for the read. How was your stream? What did you do today, Nelson? So far, let me just give you a quick summary. Our main character's name is Charm, and she, is a prisoner of war who has a mind lock spell, making her kind of like the Emperor's toy, and she runs a gentleman's club that is populated with bone ghosts, which are essentially like a homunculi that she makes from the bones around the gentleman's club. And that's what we know so far. One of the princes of the empire injured one of the bone ghosts, so they're currently trying to fix that one. Was good today, ASMR? Oh, I bet that was cozy. Thank you so much for sharing your community with me. I really appreciate it. I promise I'll take good care of everyone. Make sure you all have your blankets and your water. If you're sticking around here, we'll all take a sip together. And we're gonna do a couple of deep breaths. Okay, ready? In. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And hold it. 1, 2, 3. And out for 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, one more time. Go ahead and breathe in. And hold it. And breathe out. Is there a community Discord? Yeah, if you press exclamation point Discord, it'll bring you right into our little puddle huddle. Alright, now that we've got everybody cozied in, I'm gonna go ahead and go back to reading. The lady slid her fingers over the upper edge of the wound. A knife, the image of it, slipping through Shame's face, flashed from her fingertips to her brain. The lady blinked tears of futile anger. The knife wouldn't have done more than make a shallow cut on justice or desire, easily dealt with a bit of empathy fluid reduced to gel. It would have left barely a scratch on pain. Shame, not as resilient as her comrades, didn't cling to the vat-grown buddy enough to give it resilience. Thank you so much for all the follows. I believe one of you brought us right up to 3.5k. That's so exciting. Thank you so much. Behind the lady and their shared school, Charm watched. There was nothing she could do except bill Felian for the time Shane would be incapacitated. Ask him to pay for the damages as she might ask him to pay for a broken cup. He might pay. Usually he did not. The lady wished she could stop these things happening. She didn't like her ghosts to be hurt, but neither did she want them back. They were, and should be, separate from her. This wound is too deep to repair without some help. But we'll pop you into the tank and everything will be fine, the lady told Shane. I'm sorry this had to happen to you. Charm hovered, ready to draw the lady aside if Shane faltered. Shane didn't hesitate. You're not to blame, lady. The lady nodded, wordless. Naturally, it was not her fault, but it was kind of Shane to remind her. She got a bottle of solution, washed the wound, and then retrieved her suture kit and carefully stitched Shane's cheek closed. Let me check how Justice is doing, and once we get her out, we'll get you in. She pulled the cover from the human growth tank. Lavender empathy fluid supported the body of Justice. Eternally 14, she floated above the support rack, too lightweight to sink. The lady had put her in here just a week ago. The lady removed the lid on the glass tank, breathing in the metallic, faintly salting scent of bodies and birth that came from the empathy fluid. She examined Justice's thighs critically and found the skin smooth and pink. The scalds had healed almost completely. The lady lowered the chains and hooked them to the corners of the rack and winched Justice up out of the tank. The little body sagged against the rack as it came free of its supporting gelatinous fluid. If the bone ghosts are very strange. They all are named Shame, Justice, Desire, Pride, and Pain. And what I'm understanding so far is that they're planted from charm slash the lady's mind. I don't know if they actually represent the feelings that they have at the moment, or if they're just random names. We haven't gotten that far just yet. The lady let the majority of the empathy fluid on her drip back onto the tank, and then swung the rack over the dissection table and lowered it gently down. She tipped Justice out of the rack onto the side, making sure Justice's head, with her sodden braid, hung over the edge. Thick, syrupy fluid strung down from Justice's nose and mouth, draining into a pail on the floor. The fluid in the tank is still usable, noted the lady. That's fortunate. Empathy fluid was the second rarest substance in the world, second only to the rejuve that kept the Imperial family and their chosen few eternally frozen in age. It wouldn't do to waste it. She got the rat back over the tank, fetched warm blankets from her chimney cupboard to wrap up Justice's body and warm her up. The lady prepped an injection from a blue glass bottle and slid it into the dead bone ghost carotid artery. She suctioned a little more fluid out of Justice's airways while the body temperature came up. When Justice was warm, she started resuscitation. Chest compressions, and then breathing into the little body. The lady ejected the part of her that was Justice into the body, struggling for a moment to get the clinging ghost out of their mind. She isn't me. Her experiences are no part of me. I'm the daughter of the Chancellor, not this girl who has to sit sorting people all day. Justice coughed and dragged in a breath. The lady rolled her onto her side again, rubbing her back soothingly. There now. I'd have liked to give you more time, but this will do. Justice looked around the lab, wobbly as a new hatch chick. She curled up, clutching the blankets, and squeezed her eyes closed. Tears across the bridge of her nose. Just lie still for a moment. I must get Shame into the tank, the lady soothed her. Justice craned to see her head to see Shame sitting, bloody and disheveled, when she shivered and curled tighter. While Shame undressed herself, the lady prepared a syringe of a vein and another mask. She kinked the support rack over the human tank down, so the rack was mostly submerged, but with the head end still clear of the fluid. Shame's distinction was obvious once she was nude. From throat to feet she was covered with a swirling birthmark the color of the blood-field wine. She stepped into the tank, lying back against the padded steel bands. The lady put the other mask over her mouth and nose and carefully dripped in the other. Shame's eyelids sagged. The lady kissed Shame's forehead gently. Slept well, she told her ghost. The lady took a firm grip on the syringe, but lowered the needle again. Shame slept, her face at peace. It was always hard to make the final strike. It would let the ghost back into her mind, even though the lady didn't have to see or interact with her. All animals strove to live, but Shame never had. Perhaps more had gone wrong with Shame than her skin. Shame needed to be kept alive just as much as the lady's other creations, and with Justice back in the tank so frequently these days, it would take far too long to grow Shame an entirely new body. It would be bad enough to know Shame was with her for this little time. To have her that much longer and risk reabsorbing Justice as well. The lady sealed herself with that thought. Shame must die instantly if the body was to be salvaged. The lady stabbed the needle between Shame's ribs and into her heart. The bone ghost arched up for one moment, then collapsed as the lady pressed a vein into her heart. Light danced across the lady's vision, and the world whirled unsteadily as her own heart slurred in sympathy. And the confinement of their shared soul, charm drew Shame's battered consciousness back behind the barriers that preserved the lady's innocence. She cradled Shame close. The lady's dizziness passed. It always made her queasy to kill or animate a bone ghost. Animals never troubled her. Only her ghosts were so difficult. She pulled the needle free of Shame's checks. The lady smoothed the mouse-colored hair gently. Poor thing. You just don't have enough strength, she murmured. She lowered the body the rest of the way into the empty fluid, then pushed the lid onto the tank and covered it with a black cloth so the light wouldn't discolor the healing wound. Justice got herself up to sitting, and after a moment, Moore got to her feet. The lady smiled. Justice was so strong. The lady was always glad she'd made this ghost a body, even if the bones had been too small for an adult. And because the bones grew separately on a tree instead of naturally in a body, one femur was slightly longer than the other. "How are you?" the lady asked. Charm watched through the lady's eyes. Justice sniffled, getting control, and Charm hated herself viciously for doing this to Justice. Of all of them, Justice. She should have thought of a way to refuse Philon. Now, Justice is going to have to deal with him again. The fire drinkers would let Philon out as soon as his immediate rage would pass. Then everyone would go on pretending, just as they always had. "I'm fine, lady. Just cold," Justice assured her. "Put your feet into shame shoes, and then hurry and get yourself a bath to warm up," she instructed. "Not too hot. Your thighs will still be tender." "Yes, lady." Justice helped herself along the table to where her cane leaned by the stair. She left the shoes, let herself out, and limped away into the dark. The lady sat with her hands folded serenely together in her lap, listening to the bones in the orchard as they chimed and clattered into the breeze. At first, it had seemed as if with more bone ghosts, she had fewer blackouts, but she wasn't sure anymore. And in so, she had been awake all the time. She had never been conscious much in Beauregard, though she had this garden behind a great house, her trees, and this laboratory where some kind person got her everything she could leave notes about. This world beyond sanctuary was dangerous. The lady rose, went to the shelf of baskets, reminding herself what bones were still needed for each partial skeleton, and then picked up a pair of cicadas. She was awake, and her immediate duty was done. She would tend the bone trees and collect any bones that were ready. Invisible and undetected, Charm stalked in the back of the lady's mind. She wrestled with useless anger and kept shame safe. And that is the end of the first chapter. What do you guys think of the book so far? I feel like there's a lot of particular things that we definitely are going to have to learn that aren't explained at the moment. But I do think it's interesting. As far as I'm concerned, I think we can only go up from here. Chapter 2. Orchard House was closed on Tuesdays. Only one customer was permitted to enter. Siege, storm, or strife, the Emperor called at Orchard House on Tuesdays. Some days, like today, he was late, but in the 5 decades of Charm's life here, he had never before failed to call by noon. Normally, she would have attended the various tasks of Orchard House while she waited, checked the pantry, reviewed the menus, ordered supplies for the cook, and the second floor. Today, she could not make herself focus on these trivialities. Hello? Can I breathe? Won't go 1 second, I'm gonna grab a butter. Okay. Today, Charm paced the parlors and halls in restless, rustling black silk, endless circles punctuated by attempts to settle. The lawn must be dealt with. The Emperor must do something about his sons besides pay the bills for their damages. She glanced at the clock. 5 minutes after 2. Mistress, there are 2 fire drinkers at the reception desk. Payne's voice made Charm jump. She turned on the pallid bone ghost in an ear snap. Orchard House is closed on Tuesday. She should not have to remind anyone. Forgive me, mistress, but they say that they have a message from the Empress. Charm paused. This had never happened before. It clashed, discordant, with the fact that today was Tuesday. Thank you, Payne. Charm stood and pressed her hands against the comforting armor of her against the comforting armor of her corset. Inhaled and let all the breath out. Calm. She did not run. Ladies of position did not run. It pleased her for poise to counterbalance her hair and her clothes, to ape her betters. The murmur of her skirts was loud in the silent hall. 2 fire drinkers stood at parade before the reception desk, crisp in their bright red coats. Their calling outside business hours heralded nothing good, much less for the message from the Empress. Pride was absent from her post at the grand curve of the reception desk, enjoying a day spent in her attic private bed with her knitting. Good morning, Charm greeted the fire drinkers with a professional smile. The fire drinker on the left stepped forward and held out a slim letter. A crystal, carved with the imperial seal, sparkled, set into the wax. Mistress, for your hand from the Empress. The fire drinker's voice was calm. The fire drinker's voice was distorted into androgynous middle tones by his or her helm. Charm took the letter carefully. The seal was identical to the one in the Emperor's ring. The sight of it made Charm's mind lock tick and whir. Inside were 2 scant lines and a fine hand. Mistress Charm, these guards will bring you to me. Please come at once. It is important. Gaming with Kevin and Wapo 404. Thank you very much for the follows. Welcome in. Elizabeth, Empress of Boren. Empresses of Boren came and went at irregular intervals. Had the Emperor tired of Elizabeth? The first Empress, Elias and Luther's mother, had died in childbirth. Prince Phelan's mother, the second Empress, had been beheaded and set a standard after which Prince Strefan's mother had taken a divorce settlement and required to a quiet life of disgrace in the country. The fourth Empress had died in childbirth. The one who had come in just after Charm had arrived had no child and had been divorced and sent back to her native country after objecting loudly and publicly about the imperial Tuesdays. The current Empress, Elspeth, had lasted a shade over 6 years. She was by far the quietest of the Emperor's choices. The girl rarely said a complete sentence in public. From the moment the Emperor had woken Charm in the Orchard House, she had never left the grounds. Orchard House was her world. What could possibly motivate this little wisp of an interest to send for her husband's mistress after 6 years of tactfully ignoring the situation? No wife, not one, had ever sent for Charm. Charm fingered one pink curl where it fell over her shoulder. I can't go to the palace with pink hair, Charm hedged. It's entirely inappropriate. Surely the palace calls for royal blue. The fire drinker on the right shifted uncomfortably inside the blood-red uniform. I'm sorry, mistress, but you will come to the palace. Ah, I see. Fire drinkers had their own compulsions, and Charm wouldn't make their mind locks punish them for failing in their duty. Payne brought her a wrap, gloves, and a little tasseled bag. Charm had no wraps, no gloves, no bags. Payne's things fit, of course, and would serve. Charm gave the Empress's note to Payne, shrugged the wrap around her shoulders, and busied her hands putting on the gloves. She couldn't recall the last time she'd worn gloves, if she ever had. The gentlemen who came to Orchard House had never noticed the scars on her palms, or if they had, they had politely kept it to themselves. Pain, if the Emperor comes, please give him the Empress's message. He will understand. It was, after all, Tuesday. The fire drinker homes turned toward one another. A chill ran icy fingers up Charm's spine. The carriage was waiting in the front garden. It was an extraordinary vehicle with no insignia on the door and heavy curtains over the windows. The horses were mismatched, one chestnut and one bay. Not an imperial carriage, an anonymous visit. She was to be smuggled in. The fire drinkers held the door and handed her up to the carriage. Charm settled onto the tucked velvet seat. The horses started with a jerk. She had no desire to open the curtains. The confined interior seemed safer than the broad uncertainty of the city. Her fingers bit into the soft cushion. What did Elspeth want? Where was the Emperor? She must not huddle. Charm sat up, away from the back of the seat. She turned the lamp in the carriage compartment and searched Payne's bag until she found the gold compact of powder that Payne used to give her pallid complexion some semblance of normalcy. Charm checked her face, dusted powder over the freckles that had started to show on her nose. Charm herself did not have freckles. The lady had freckles. She shook off the thought. The lady was safely concealed, and thinking about her would only complicate things. Charm examined her brilliant hair with a critical eye. It wouldn't do to arrive must. Whatever happened in the world, a woman should face it well-groomed. Besides, the situation might not be as bad as all that. Empress Elizabeth would turn 28 in a few months' time. Maybe the poor girl wanted some advice. It seemed reasonable. Sooner or later, one of the Empress wives would have more brains than an inkpot. A grim cherry lane showed Charm from the back door through silent servants' passages into a warm and purple gold sitting room. The Emperor's wife had pale hair and paler skin, untouched by cosmetics. She was so thin she looked fragile inside elegantly restrained jewels and a heavy brocade. A harsh contrast to Charm's buxom self. A single fire drinker stood at parade breast by a gilded connecting door emblazoned with the imperial crown. The firelight flickering in reflection on his featureless helmet. His white sash sat against his scarlet coat. The only thing in the room more pale than the Empress, Captain Orem. Something was dangerously wrong. Charm wanted to bolt to the carriage and fling herself back into the safety of Orchard House. She held on to her courage. She would not run like a startled partridge, flapping through the halls. The Empress put on a faint, brave smile. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Charm," was all she said. She gestured for Charm to follow and opened the connecting door, and slipped inside with Charm trailing obediently after her. The great man in the silk-draped bed lay unmoving. Only the rasping fall and rise of his chest was betrayed that he was still alive. Perfumes and incense couldn't cover the sour smell of his dying. Charm looked down on the Emperor of Born in shock and pressed a shaking hand over her mouth. She'd never seen him in less than perfect health. Rejuvenation drugs kept his age at a robust 52, just as they kept Charm eternally young. Watching him struggle to breathe jolted Charm's world. How long has he been like this? Since this morning. The doctors have done all they could. Elizabeth looked to Charm for a long moment. It was not right that he leave us without you, of all people, being able to say goodbye to him. But the young Empress said her soft voice, My lord, I've brought Charm to you." The Emperor's gray eyes opened. His smile was weak. "Thank you, my dear." His wife put her slim hand on Charm's shoulder for a moment. The grip far stronger than Charm would have credited her for, and went out, closing the door. "It was cruel to use her to send for me," managed Charm, her voice hoarse. "I didn't. She called you on her own." His gravelly basso was syrupy with phlegm. Warringard had never grasped what was between Charm and the Emperor. and that somehow Elspeth had recognized something more, instead of assuming bestial pride of possession shot at most with her charm's heart. She tried to swallow the lump in her throat with no success. A great-hearted lady, to send for her husband's mistress. He managed a tiny nod. I recall telling you once that I underestimated her. I'm glad she sent for you. I don't have much time, and there is something I need you to do. Anything, Majesty, she answered automatically. When I am dead, one of my sons will take the throne. The one who managed it is most likely the man who has actually killed me, because none of them would risk it unless they could secure the throne for themselves. The Emperor's smile was almost admiring. I'll go to my death, wondering how and which one managed to poison me. But in the end, it doesn't matter which one it is. They're all... I believe the phrase you favor is stone bastards, everyone. Charm flushed, but he had long ago commanded her never to lie to him. You have more cause to know their true colors than my ghost, Majesty. Arleus was psychic, unmind-locked, and somehow still alive in spite of his insanity. His madness had savaged her native Inshil for 50 years. Luther had been banished to sea for an affair that nobody remembered but desire. Leon was the pedophilic whose mind-lock surgery had been botched. And Stefan was a bitter little coward of a man who wanted whatever anyone else had. No matter which one it is, the other three will not bend to him. They will bicker and fight. Some other nation will invade, and the Borean Empire will be swallowed into time. His great square fist pledged on his silken sheets. You'd allow the man who murders you to take your throne? I haven't sweated and fought, tortured and lied to see my legacy dissolve when I'm gone. The only way to save Borean is to remove my sons from the succession and give the crown to someone deserving. You are a woman, and unlikely to be suspected, and you're loyal. You have no other choice, I know, but you will choose the new emperor with care. You entrust me with what? Revolution? Charm laughed, a little at the thought, and the sound soured with a desperation that made her heart race. He was giving this responsibility to her? To her, with the captain of the fire drinkers outside the door? Let me call Captain Orem to you. Stay here. His voice kept her there, as if her legs had frozen up. I have no more time. No rejuve can save me from this, and I had not intended to die. Not ever. Not until there was someone to leave my country to. You have a position that allows you to interact naturally with nobility. You have sway with the common people. My sons trust you. Without my command, no one can force you to tell what goes on in your mind. He lifted one massive trembling hand. The imperial seal flashed upon it as he stroked the flat casting in her temple. I'm sorry it took this to protect you from the world outside your pretty prison. At the time, I didn't realize what you meant by it. Inshil's small gardens, its pretty prison, had been the lady's, but the Emperor didn't know that. It was her one secret from him, safe because he'd never imagined he needed to ask the questions that would reveal the lady. Now her secrets would be safe forever. The Emperor's chuckle made him gasp for air. He heaved himself onto his side, hacking. Charm leaped to help him, dabbing at his lips with the sheets. The Emperor hawked and spat bloody phlegm onto the intricate silk carpet. Listen to me. I only have effort left for one adjustment. It can't undo all I've done to you, but call it my amends as much as I can make them. No man shall ever bend you to his will without your consent. Nothing my sons say or do to you can force you to betray yourself to them, unless you do of your own free will to do so. They aren't fit to dictate you. I name any traitor, my sons who would wear my crown, and condemn them to death. Find whoever has killed me, and see that they do any of their conspirators die. Past that, I give you your freedom. Do what you will with it. His jaw tensed as he concentrated, and the effort made him struggle, wheezing for breath. The mind lock in Charm's temple vibrated as the mechanisms within adjusted too quickly. Her muscle spasm, taking her to her knees. Deep in Charm's mind, the lady stirred. Charm clung to the edge of the bed for a few moments until she was sure that the world had stopped rippling. The future stretched out before her, vast, unfettered, terrifying. The Emperor's face was pale as wax. Be a good girl now. Go call to my wife. You shouldn't be with me when I die. Blinking back tears, Charm pressed a kiss to the Emperor's damp, burning forehead. He smiled at her as she stood up. Goodbye, sweetheart. God forgive me for it, but I do love you. Charm managed to leave him. Passing out of the royal bedchamber felt like crossing a chasm. Captain Oram hadn't moved beside his post beside the door. The Empress stood looking into the sitting room fire. Charm choked out her words in her direction. He wants you. There were tears streaking the young Empress's face when she turned toward Charm, and her eyes were rimmed with red. Her graceful hands clenched in fists at her heavy skirts. With her husband gone, Elspeth would be the one in care of his sons. Charm held no illusions about their mercy. Her eyes met Charm's. Creatures of the same cage felt Charm. Whether it was pity, solidarity, truth, or the mind lock that impelled Charm to speak was a subject that Charm declined to examine. He always spoke of you with great tenderness and respect, she managed. I have something for you. Elspeth gestured to a great jewel case on a side table. One of the doors opened. A woman in a savagely elegant day gown came in. Elspeth fell silent. Jane had once or twice seen it, the Empress's lady of the wardrobe, a most constant companion, Countess Sebra. The Countess's middle-aged, haughty beauty was unmistakable. The Countess's lip curled, eyes sharp as obsidian. She whipped forward to stand between Charm and her charge, as if Charm might somehow contaminate the Empress. How dare you come here, whore? How dare you distress the Empress with your presence? Standing on the heavy brocade before a blazing fire, the Empress shivered and then drew herself up. Do not forget your jewels, Mistress Charm. Had been. Elspeth went in to her husband. Charm snatched the great jewel case by its handles and bolted as well as her bustled-up skirts allowed. She ran, stumbling across the echoing marble halls. Pain, desire, and justice waited on the steps of Orchard House to help their mistress inside. Charm trembled as if she were palsied. They put her to bed and slid in beside her, holding Charm in their arms as she wept for a man she was going to kill for. Alright, so we've made it to chapter 3. Chapter 3. Jane slipped into the back of the ladies' viewing gallery, the assembly hall of Boren. The seats there were packed full of the wives, grown daughters, and sweethearts of assemblymen, all come to see what the future would hold. Payne tucked her tinted spectacles into her pocket. There were only 2 open seats, on the aisle of the highest row, or in the front row, one from Countess Sebra, containing the lady's reticule. An easy choice. Payne sat down on the highest row. The lady seated in front of her presented a small sea of tasteful hats sloping down to the pierced wooden panels that screened the galleries from the tangle of shouting below. The death of Charm's emperor in the small hours of Wednesday morning had been publicly put out as death from heart failure, thanks to Rejuve, the imperially controlled anti-aging drug. He had reigned for longer than any of his subjects had been alive. For 3 generations, the Emperor had pressed down and down on the assembly until very few men of intelligence bothered with it. Today, there was no possibility of the Emperor in his private screened balcony, and a storm of argument reigned on the floor. The sudden absence of the Emperor's authority made the future unreliable and frightening for more people than Charm. Lord Hanover, the chief assemblyman, hammered his lectern in vain pursuit of decorum. The words Pain could make out most often were new emperor and fire drinkers. While the assembly indulged in a cacophony of uncertainty, a feathered hat in the ladies' viewing gallery tipped to let its owner see who had just sat down. The motion rippled out and down in the galleries as the ladies examined Pain out of the corners of their eyes and from under the brims of their hats. They added their whispers like a soprano line to the general din. The lower wards of the city were used to Pain. They saw her every day, coming and going on errands for Mistress Charm. The assemblymen, and every other uptown man old enough to escape his mother, had seen Pain behind the bar at Orchard House. Uptown ladies had no such familiarity. Pain didn't blame them for staring. People found her lack of coloring worth staring at on first acquaintance, and there was no reason gentlewomen shouldn't share the habit. Lord Hanover managed, through dint pounding of leather louder than an assemblyman could shout, to produce the semblance of order. "Mr. Anders, you have the floor, if you please," he called, choosing the only assemblyman who sat with his walking stick raised, patiently waiting for recognition. Philip Anders, notoriously not the brightest man in Mooring Guard, rose. "Dimly, gentlemen. I don't see what you're making such commotion about. Not as if we have to sit on our hands and let what come may, is it? Ain't we the ones that's supposed to decide on matters that imperial law don't cover? This ain't a matter of foreign policy, and the Emperor didn't leave any instructions about a hair. Seems to me that I recall my history well enough to remember that the Emperor was originally appointed by the Assembly. Don't see at all why we can't appoint the next one." His Spanish language and his puzzled indignation struck the hollows into silence for 2 of Pain's heartbeats. A walking stick stabbed up, and Lord Hanover's shout took advantage of the general startlement. Count Sebro. Count Sebro was in his late 40s, with ginger hair going gray. His wife was the Empress's lady of the wardrobe. Pain knew Sebro's habits well. He came to Orchard House almost every evening to dine and play cards. On occasion, he visited the second floor with Pride, who reported him a thoughtful, unselfish companion. Rare praise from Pride. His voice, when he spoke, carried well without any heat to it. "Gentlemen, it's true that we have the legal right to choose a monarch. Given the other countries who look to Boran and our provinces with such avarice, I submit to you that we must have an emperor. The question is who? Prince Aurelius, without whom our territorial holdings on the continent would collapse? That's what all the shouting about, isn't it?" Pain feigned a small cough to hide her sour smile behind her glove. Seabroff's comment was tactful in avoiding their true worry. That Aurelius the Butcher and his insane army would come home to roost. Fear of Aurelius lay like a mist over them all. He hadn't been back to Boran since the invasion of Enshil that had broken his unprotected psychic mind. He'd succeeded in seizing the mind-lock technology the Emperor had gone to war for, but only after he'd been too far gone to benefit from it himself. What Aurelius had succumbed to something and died was national tragedy and an international honor. Lord Wilcox put up his hand and didn't wait on Lord Hanover's permission to accept. "Prince Aurelius will come and take the crown by force. He'll warp our minds until we're slaves to his whims. Out of order." Lord Hanover hammered his lectern. "You will abide by the rules of order." Seabroth nodded thanks to Lord Hanover. "Though out of order, it is a sensible concern. I remind you all that even Prince Aurelius and his army, should they attempt to return to Beauregard without orders to do so, may be brought to heel by the fire drinkers. The fire drinkers." He emphasized the 2 words as if to make sure his fellows understood the implications. "They can enforce the peace. Even Prince Aurelius's passions may be suppressed should that be necessary. He is also a bastard by birth, and his father chose not to legitimize him even when he married the prince's mother. He is, for those reasons, and the obvious one of insanity, not fit. Thus, whatever we do, we must inspire Prince Aurelius to remain at his post in Enshil until the inevitable end of his life. Count Seabrough left aside that, thus far, Arlius had outlived the average psychic by decades. Given his direct access to the Reju facility in Inchill, and if his powers did not kill him, Arlius just might well live forever. Seabrough went on. Shall we have the second son? Prince Luther the traitor. The Emperor commuted punishment for the Luther's treason in the Inchill Rebellion. A voice from the crowd of assemblymen, and that's old history. Out of order, judged Lord Hanover, wrapping his lectern. So help me, gentlemen, I will have the next outburst rewarded with removal from the hall. Seabrough shook his head, smiling as if in pity. Shall we see if we can make Luther's reign stick with the fire drinkers? Armed psychics who are sworn and required by their mind locks to uphold the law? Shall we tempt their oaths by appointing a man treasonous to the Empire to rule us and them? You think they will not uphold their orders? Prince Luther was judged guilty and removed from the succession. The Emperor saw fit to return Luther to his duties, but did not pardon him. A father's tenderness towards his son is all well and good, said Seabrough rhetorically. But shall we tempt the fire drinkers to begin skating around the controls and commands like Arthur's sanity? Or perhaps he'd like to choose from amongst ourselves, who have no authority over the fire drinkers at all. The assemblymen murmured to one another, and many looked ill. The ladies echoed them. Several looked openly at Payne and whispered behind their fans. Payne was the only one who had ever seen the face of a fire drinker. Save for the fire drinkers themselves, no one knew them better than Payne. A new lady entered the viewing gallery and glided down the aisle to take the last open seat. The new lady, either innocent of who the Countess was, or devoid of any social survival with instinct, said in exquisitely cultured accents, "May I sit?" without indicating either seat. The Countess looked up as if to make a tart remark and went deathly pale. Wordlessly, she moved her bag and shifted so the newcomer could sit down. Payne examined the newcomer more closely. Her gunmetal gray satin was adorned at the wrists and throat with thick falls of costly scarlet lace that made Payne think of blood froth. Her confectionery hat perched on a massive knot in pale golden hair, silvery gold, the kind of color women wished came out of bottles and didn't. That astonishingly glorious hair was the stranger's only true beauty. Her mouth was a little too wide and her lips a little too thin, her features too sharp, as if her face was made of all blades. She gave the viewing ladies a momentary new target for their whispers, and her indifference was both splendid and dangerous. Her stillness was complete, as if she did not feel such triviality as the heat, as if she didn't need to breathe the stuffy air. The precision of her was like a stiletto. If she'd been a noble woman of Beauregard, surely Payne would have heard of her in the card room at Orchard House. But Payne could not place her. Down on the floor, Seabrough pressed his advantage and the fear of the fire drinkers, drawing Payne's attention back. Even if it were safe, does that do a kindness to the men and women who make up that force? Do we condemn them to slow madness and agonies that psychics in other countries suffer? Shall we shut them up behind stone walls and iron doors where we can't hear the screaming, or risk them running mad in the streets? And what do you think the common people, whose children make up the vast majority of the force, would do should we callously cast the fire drinkers adrift? The lords muttered as they worked through the implications of the armed psychics going mad. Payne's lips pressed together as she admired Count Sabre's tactic. If the fire drinkers hadn't gone mad with the death of the Emperor, then they wouldn't do so. But Seabrough was appealing to fear, not logic. Andrew's walking stick went up again. That leaves only Prince Valen and Prince Strephon. Olive Brienne knew Prince Valen's disposition, even if no one in society spoke of it openly. His rages they might have overlooked, but Seabrough had just cited insanity as barring concern as if it were true. And no one seemed to mind. The nobility's resolute blindness about their own behaviors behind closed doors had limits Velen pressed too often. Beaten wives had their bruises, and horse bruises didn't matter. Women, men, gambling, and animals the nobility passed politely by without comment. Anything done out of country could be written off as a vicious rumor. A predilection for children, made so clear by his perennial choice of justice as a companion, was a sticking point that even they could not abide by. A new walking stick, one of them, was recognized by Lord Hanover. Lord Fergus. Lord Fergus, a genial and welcome presence in the card-room, for all he came only a night or two a week, was blessed with an extravagant dark mustache that seemed to make up for his entirely bald pate. Prince Strephon is too inexperienced in matters of government to be qualified. Fergus's bluntness made several men around him wince. Sir Lyle raised his walking stick and was recognized. Another of the frequent card players at Orchard House. He had a good look and astute judgment of when to stand, when to bid, and when to fold his hand. Prince Strephon might need a great deal of advice, certainly, he said lowly. Hayne mentally applauded Lyle's play. She also doubted that the assembly would be saddened if Strephon could be made reliant on them. No matter our choice, gentlemen, if we hope to retain our authority for future assemblies, we must make our decision quickly and as a single body. Zebra said. Prince Strephon has repeatedly demonstrated an appalling lack of financial restraint in his private life, argued Fergus. Gentlemen, think what he'll do with the national finances in his hands. Have we a better choice at hand? Asked Zebra. We must have a member of the imperial family to ensure the safety of the empire. A sigh of moving cloth in the gallery caught Payne's ear, and she glanced to see Countess Zebra rising from her seat down by the scene. She had been a lady of the wardrobe to the last 4 empresses. She raised the sharp pleats edging her skirt, the necessary 1.5 inches, and not a fraction more, showing only the toe of her shoe with its jeweled ornament, as she climbed the stairs towards the exit. As she passed Payne, Countess Zebra peered from beneath the tastefully furled plumes on her hat, and let her cool gaze linger on the lone ghost. Someone should speak to the fire drinkers about letting whores run loose in respectable parts of town, Countess Zebra murmured, just loudly enough for it to travel in the stuffy air. She sniffed, chin rising as if she were examining something foul, and passed out of the gallery toward the exit of the assembly hall in a grand sweep of indignity. How uncalled for, the lady across the aisle from Payne said quietly. Easy for you to say, Lyra, her neighbor retorted. Your husband doesn't spend 6 nights a week dining, gambling, and whatever else at Orchard House. So, this was Lady Lyra Fergus, the much-beloved wife of the kind, decent, mustached Lord Fergus. Firstly, said Lady Fergus in the acerbic tone of a woman giving a lesson, anyone is allowed to observe the assembly of Morin. No one, be they high or low, may be barred. It is one of our freedoms of government. In addition, the lady went on crisply, if the dear Countess spent any time whatsoever attending to her household, perhaps her husband would have one less cause to dine out. General stirring of fans almost hid the smirking of the other ladies. Only the lady in grey and scarlet did not join the general amusement. She looked, if anything, upon Lady Fergus with a sly, bitter tip at the corner of her dagger-slashed lips. Lady Lyra Fergus fixed her eyes resolutely on the vote being taken by the assembly floor. Payne followed suit. Very well, gentlemen. Our deputation to the palace will inform Prince Strephon of our choice. On Monday, we will celebrate the coronation of Strephon I, Emperor of Morin, announced Lord Hanover. Neither he nor anyone else on the floor looked pleased. And thus ends Chapter 3. Thank you for the follow, Goatman, and all the other lovely names that I haven't been able to catch because I have been among pages. I am going to take a 5-minute break to give my throat a little bit of rest and put up some tea and honey so that I may continue reading. Make sure that you all are staying comfy if you're not intending to sleep anytime soon. Stretch your legs, take a couple of deep breaths, and readjust your blankets as necessary. We will return very shortly. Okay, my loves. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but my stomach is very unhappy. So I think we're gonna pause it for here today. We got through chapter 3, and I have it bookmarked. So we will come back to it. When my stomach pains pass, I might do some art sharing in the server. But otherwise, we have our sponsored Raid Shadow Legends stream tomorrow. Hopefully you guys will be there for that. But no pressure if not. I am gonna raid a non-ASMR stream, so this is your warning to adjust your sound settings. We're gonna raid Dinchi. Thank you as always for joining me. I'm sorry that I have to cut it short, but I do really appreciate it. Much love. Make sure you all hydrate. Take good care of yourselves. If you're from my stream and have my subs emotes, this is our raid command. If not, use whatever you want to. Hearts, cats, whatever you got. Alright, my darlings. That is it for tonight. Thank you as always for joining me and have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Be good people, everyone. Mwah.